Will Billy Napier and the Florida Gators keep Jamir Perez, the commitment they just got out of Ohio, or is he going to end up somewhere else? We're going to talk about that and more commitments here on the Recruiting Blitz.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today's show has a handful of commitments I want to discuss, and we'll also get into what's getting ready to happen the rest of this week. As soon as I get done with this, I'm sure there's going to be a handful more commitments because it's Monday morning when I'm doing this, and it was the first big visit weekend. But I may do a show later today. There will definitely be a longer podcast tomorrow. I can assure you more commitments are coming. But here are a few of the commitments that have happened. And again, we could do some more. Starting off, bit of a surprise to me, Mr. Jamir Perez, 6'4", 300, not 200, 360-pound defensive tackle out of Glenville High School, a long time staple for the Ohio State Buckeyes, fan of the Buckeyes growing up, takes a visit to UF, and he commits. What did I say last week? There will be surprises. It will be random. Here you go. Jamir Perez fits that. He had a great visit. Billy Napier and his staff knocked it out of the park. They showed the vision for him, and he thought of himself as a Southeastern Conference player, talking about his body type and the way he likes the Southeastern Conference. So he becomes a Gator. But he did, before I get into more detail, he did previously have dates set up. Again, Florida was the first official visit. Wisconsin, June 6th. Iowa State, June 10th. Ohio State, June 13th. That's probably the most important one. Purdue, June 20th. Now, he says that he's shutting it down. I'm not buying that. I don't think Ryan Day and his staff are going to let that ride. Doesn't mean that they'll get him on campus, but my bet is they do at least once in some capacity. That's just the nature of the business. And the people in Ohio, that is like a cult towards Ohio State. We'll see if I'm right or wrong. And, oh, by the way, Ohio State's a lot better than Florida is. We'll see, but I've been around long enough to know that Ohio State is a very strong attraction, and I'm sure everybody out there does as well. And 360-pound nose guards are extremely rare. So to that point, he was ranked by the 247 composite as the 1,012th player in the country. As far as just 247 itself, they had him as the number 77 D-line. But hardly anybody can play nose guard because they just don't have the natural girth to be a two-gap player in a zero tech or just a slight shade off of zero tech and take on two blockers. So the recruiting rankings are not as important here. What is valid is that he's a massive kid with official visits to a lot of premier programs, and that is probably going to be something he has to really figure out. Does Jamir Perez want to stay with Florida and never take another official visit? You want to get one shot at this. Some kids do it that way. And I don't know Perez, wouldn't know him if he walked up to me, but he is somebody that is absolutely coveted. And I imagine he's going to end up taking another visit somewhere. And that is 100% my own conjecture. Let's see if I'm right. But this one, I have a feeling, is not done. Now we have a few other commitments to discuss. The Oregon State Beavers get a nice running back commitment. Braylon Tolliver out of Erie, Colorado, is headed to play for the Beavs. We've got Daquan Dunn, for Arizona State. He's out of Berkner High School, Richardson, Texas. They've continued to mine the greater Dallas area. Richardson's just outside of Dallas. Arizona State is building a nice class, getting an under-the-radar guy playing corner, 6 foot, 175 pounds. And then UCLA doesn't get one, but they get two commitments over the weekend. Yahya Gad, Medina, Tennessee. That's kind of an unusual place for UCLA. They used to do that way back in the day, 80s and 90s, get a lot of national recruits. But 6'5", 260, defensive lineman. And then they also gained the commitment of Camden Jensen, another kid out of Colorado, 6'6", 250, a tight end from Littleton. He goes to Heritage. Now, as I said before, I want to discuss some of what's getting ready to happen. We have a lot of visits, and I'm sure as soon as I get done with this, as I noted earlier, somebody's going to commit somewhere else. It's nature of the beast. That's okay. If I do more shows today or do a longer one tomorrow or both, that's cool. We come back, I'm going to talk about some expectations for a few schools and what you should expect this week and next here on the Portal Podcast. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and taking control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. It's easy to collaborate with your partner as well. Instead of keeping all your capital in different places, you can track your personal accounts, set goals, and more under Monarch Money without all the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. There's about to be a surge in commitments between now and the end of this week. Georgia and Auburn, among others, had program changing types of recruits on campus. I even did a preview for Auburn this past weekend. They don't normally get associated with elite recruiting, but their official visit list was tremendous. Georgia had unofficial visitors, underclassmen, and the scavenger hunt that they do each and every year. It's kind of a cool event at UGA with their official visitors. They're probably going to get some commitments this week, or maybe it bleeds into next week. But those are just two of several programs that are going to be on the hunt for the verbal commitments. Now, I want to mention a couple of things here that I find interesting. There are a lot of players that say I'm shutting it down that still take visits. That means they're not really shutting it down. I'm not going to get into specifics and names, but a few recruits have said those kinds of things recently. If you're still taking phone calls and you're still taking visits, you did not shut it down. Secondarily, just because kids commit, as we know, that does not mean that it's over with all the way through, because you can't sign until December. But at least for now, several I expect to make that decision. Maybe again, like I just mentioned a few minutes ago, Jamir Perez could be that guy. Maybe UF does keep him from taking a Wisconsin or Ohio State or Purdue, whoever it is. Maybe he doesn't take any more trips. But this early in the process, it's still May. All his friends still taking visits. We'll see how that goes. And again, Ohio State's involved with an in-state kid. Not normally a circumstance where they're going to give up. So if your school had visits this past weekend, be ready for commitments, even if you didn't necessarily expect it. Nobody thought Jamir Perez was going to commit to Florida either. I'm going to use that one again. That one was about as close to shocking as it's going to get. But that's recruiting in 2025. Secondarily, if your school did not have anybody on campus this past weekend, just didn't have visits, and that's certainly fine, you should probably track who they've got coming up and when, and then backtrack and look at the schools that those kids did visit. Several took visits this past weekend around the country. Some took unofficial visits, etc. There's a lot of different things going on with these recruitments that you may not know, and you can get some tea leaves pretty easily from it. You can find some free articles online. You can find it here, etc. But there's plenty of information out there, and it's fun to read about it. You'd be surprised at what recruits look at compared to what adults look at for why they choose a school or even to visit a school. So relationships is top of the board, but there's so many other tentacles from that. It's kind of fun to dive into. The next big weekend is not this upcoming. There's nobody visiting this next weekend. I don't know if the NCAA made that a dead weekend or what, but there's no visits. It will be the 30th. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on kids that just took those visits to commit, as well as getting more kids to maybe either move a visit date up or back. You're going to see some posturing among schools trying to get the first visit or the last visit for kids that didn't take a May 16th visit. You'll see some of that. And again, there's going to be a couple more random commitments. Will they stick? Every time somebody commits, that's one of the first things that should pop into your head. Is this young man going to be committed to my school or the rival school? Can we flip him? This is recruiting in 2025, and especially with NIL, the transfer portal, and everything else that's involved. we are just getting started. This was a big weekend, but again, there's a lot to be gleaned from it down the road as well. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to get all your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop. I am Brian Smith. We will see you again soon here on the Portal Podcast.